So please respect the bell, and I think we should just get started. So equal opportunity accorded to us by the alphabet, Counselor Joe Pantalone, 3 minutes.
Well, thank you very much. First of all, I'd like to congratulate Maytree for a great conference here. Maytree is a leader in terms of developing leaders and identifying issues which for our community to prosper. I come here in a way knowing about what we're all talking about here. My own personal story is one of prosperity and equity. You know, my family is poor farmers from Italy, 7 kids, 2 adults, sharecroppers, coming to this country. You know, and I myself, as a 13-year-old who did not speak any English, actually spoke 2 words of English because I've seen it in the movies, yeah and no. So I'm a product of the kind of services that are required in a society in order to allow somebody to become integrated and succeed. So I'm a product of the English as a second language. And I've been proud of the fact that, you know, since the city has been so kind and generous to me and my family, then obviously I believe in public service, and that's why I'm running for mayor. Now, in terms of the issue that I think is important is prosperity and equity come from the integration of the society. And I think that's probably the biggest issue that we have to face up with transit city. You know, there's 124 kilometers of streetcars, basically European style though, not like the old clunkers we have here sometimes, which will integrate every corner of the city. And that's an issue of not only of transportation, because, you know, that's a serious problem we have in Toronto. So the population of the GTA grows by 1 million people every 10 or so years, and yet our transit has not grown with it. But it's also a process of social integration and accessibility. For example, the $4 billion of the provincial government cut in Transit City has resulted in 300,000 Torontonians not getting transit for a while in favor. And those 300,000 Torontonians which have been cut out are in Scarborough-Malvern, Priority neighborhood. They are in the Weston, Priority neighborhood, and in the Jane Finch corridor, which is also priority. To me, that's wrong. You know, what we're doing is basically denying opportunities for those who most need, 300,000, to be able to get a job somewhere else in Toronto, to access the recreational facilities, and so forth. That's one. The other thing that I'd like to mention is that there's 200,000 permanent residents in Toronto, and if the statistics are correct, 85% of them will become Canadian citizens eventually. That's the statistics in this country. And I think that we have to give them the right to vote as permanent residents. I know it would have worked in my family. You know, I would have been, this is 1 minute, but that's it.
No.
10 seconds. Well, thank you very much for being here. I look forward to the debate. Thank you.
Namaste, Wanakam, Salam Alaikum, Buenos Dias, Buongiorno, Bonjour. I'm absolutely delighted to be here, and I'd like to share a little story because this is at the heart of why I'm running for mayor. And it's the story of an 18-year-old girl who came to this country with a grade 3 education in her own language, no English skills, no contacts, no money, and through no one's fault, no conspiracy, effectively became a prisoner in her own home for the better part of a decade during which she got married and had 5 children in rapid succession. But when someone came to the door and only spoke English, she didn't answer the door. When the phone rang and it wasn't in her mother tongue, she hung up the phone. There were no trips to the mall. There were no parent-teacher nights because she was ashamed to go with her children to school because she couldn't speak the language. Until one day, a woman arrived at the door who did speak her language. A woman from the Y, funded by the United Way, who said, "We have English as a second language courses." And the woman smiled and laughed and said, "I have 5 children, 2 of them in diapers. Unless someone takes care of my children, I can't take the classes as much as I would love to." The woman from the Y said, "Not a problem. Daycare is part of the package, and it's all free." The woman took the courses. She learned English. It transformed her life and the lives of her family. She was able to get a job. She was able to go with her children to school. She was able, because she believes in giving back, to join the Neighborhood Information Center and provide that same service to 50 other immigrant women in the neighborhood. That woman is my mom. One generation later, her son is running to be mayor of the city of Toronto. But there are tens of thousands of Dominica Rossis in apartments and homes across this city. 2003 became an election about stopping a bridge. 2010 has to be an election about building bridges to the inner suburbs, about building bridges to the ethnocultural community, about building bridges to the not-for-profit community, the business community, and the region as a whole. That's what a Rocco Rossi candidacy is all about. It's about providing opportunities to others, whether their parents came here 100 years ago or 100 days ago. Because this city has given everything to me and my family, and no one is going to work harder to ensure that opportunity comes to everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, George.
Well, thank you very much to Maytree for bringing such a great group of people together. I was so impressed to catch the tail end of the work that you've been doing this morning, and I think it reflects so well on the work that Maytree does overall. And I have been, as a member of government, on the receiving end of the pressure of the work that Maytree does, so I understand very well the quality of the impact that it has. My name is George Smitherman, and I'm a lifelong resident of the city of Toronto, and I have been given the great fortune of being involved in some of the most extraordinary community efforts and being involved in helping to lead some of the most important governmental efforts as well. I bring to this race the passion of a lifelong Torontonian, and one frustrated as well with the way that the promise of the city of Toronto has been lost over the last number of years. That for all of the goodwill that existed, the process and the proceeds of that process, the results, just really didn't meet up to our expectations. That for all of the diversity, our strength, and the quality of education, the highest levels to be found of any population in the world, we have not yet found in this beloved city of Toronto the potential to live up to the full meaning of these words, diversity, our strength. And I think that's a crucial bit in this election. No doubt the candidates that are on this stage will each reflect well on these. I think that alignment of values will be very clear. But please do not misunderstand that the values that are at play in this election extend much beyond those that are on this stage today. Make no mistake that there is in our city a real life behind a kind of candidacy that I described as having a deficit of ambition. I think this is a time for those that wish to lead Toronto to demonstrate that they have an ambition for Toronto, of a place that works again, which means that there's transportation that moves you across the city, and a place that provides meaningful opportunity for this diversity of wealth that is the city of Toronto. I've got the experience and the courage to lead these kind of efforts, and I hope that I can enjoy your support. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And picking up on a topic that you all brought up in your opening remarks, we want to sort of talk a little bit more specifically about settlement, immigration, sorts of issues as they relate to settlement specifically. Immigration is a federal responsibility, of course, but settlement ultimately happens locally. What will you do as mayor to address the issues of access to employment and the increasing poverty that are faced by newcomers? Actually, we're going to start with Mr. Rossi.
Thank you very much. Well, the first thing is that we need to be effective advocates to the federal government to make sure that we are treated fairly in Toronto and in Ontario more broadly, because today settlement funds come from the federal government, and Quebec gets twice as much per immigrant as Ontario does. We've got half of the immigrants coming to the GTA out of all of the immigrants in Canada, and clearly we can't allow that imbalance to continue. Secondly, we need to work with great groups like TRIAC that have been doing fantastic work through mentorship, through the networking programs. We need to combine that with, quite frankly, a job that we've not done very well with the various ethnocultural business chambers of commerce that have sprung up, whether it's the Tamil.
Great. I'm just going to move along. Get everyone in. George?
Well, I think that the issue with respect to settlement and employment specifically means that leadership needs to come from the top. And I think that it's time that the Mayor of Toronto, as a representative of a population so diverse, needs to begin to declare, with all the vigor and all of the prestige that the office holds, using the full benefit of the bully pulpit, that the Canadian experience trap needs to be brought to an end. All of the work and all of the efforts that we make to address issues with respect to respective qualifications, I don't feel amounts to enough against the barriers that exist at the moment. I think the City of Toronto needs to emerge as a more exemplary employer. Not to say that they haven't done well. Attrition at the City of Toronto represents a great opportunity, and the city needs to be prepared to put its money where its mouth is and be willing to work with not-for-profit and community-based organizations in the delivery of programs. It's more effective, it's more efficient, and it's the kind of things I champion as Minister of Health in the province of Ontario.
Thank you, George. Joe?
I think the answer, like any other answer, is complex. First of all, the city has got to do its own part. You know, I happen to be in the Civic Nomination Committee, so Radley, for example, was a member of a panel that I was at, in which we chose basically the new board members of TCHC. We made sure they were representative of whoever's in TCHC. The first time we have somebody who's a Black Torontonian who was actually lived in TCHC. And you know what? Because we have a representative group now there, the CEO now is a representative of Toronto, also from a visible minority, and we are trying to filter it down. The city is going to do more in ensuring that the 46% of Torontonians are of visible minority, for example, then we've got to approach, reach, or maybe exceed that as a percentage of the 45,000 or so employees that are the employees of the city, its agency boards, and the departments. Furthermore, we've got to deepen this issue of diversity. I think we pay lip service to it. You know, we're proud of being different, that's value. You know, we're proud of our cuisine, our cultures, but we're really not taking full economic advantage, but not taking advantage of the connections that people have in their own home country. I would like to deepen that, explore that for the benefit of everybody.
Thank you. I'd like to actually move right to a related question, which is, okay, let's say people get jobs. They get here, they go to school, they need to get the services. This often involves people needing transit services. And as you know, people in the inner suburbs and beyond face particular challenges in that area. So especially groups like youth, newcomers, seniors, moms and kids, they depend heavily on transit. They face the worst transit conditions in the city, slow and infrequent service, overcrowding, poor connections to school and work. I think people here have spoken in this question line that they really would like to know specifically how you would improve and integrate our transit systems, not just the TTC, but in the GTA in general to serve these populations. Let's start with George.
Well, firstly, on the GTA issues, I think it's just about attitude as a starting point. The reality is that with Deputy Mayor Pantalone and Mayor Miller and Councillor Giambroni and such, they really do not show a very positive view with respect to integration on the GTA. It's improved, but there's still tremendous opportunities for us to recognize that we are a unified economic area and that the differences that we've often focused on seem to dissipate by the day. A lot of room for improvement. I put forward a plan that's about 2 5-year tranches of investment in transit. It is ambitious, and it's been criticized by some for its ambition. Bringing new resources from the city combined with those that the province and the federal government have committed allows us a real opportunity to unite the various parts of the city in a way that has been overdue for decades and decades. And I'd love people to look more at my transportation plan. You can find that on my website. It's many pages of detail, and especially with a map that powerfully demonstrates the capacity that we have within 10 years to create these unifying circumstances, notwithstanding the criticisms that Councillor Pantalone brings to funding issues from the province. The province still has $11 billion on the table for transit in Toronto, and we should build on that and make this real opportunity, this leap forward, and show our ambition for Toronto through a strong transportation plan.
Joe.
Well, I think it's unacceptable when you have the provincial federal government getting 92% of all the taxes raised in Toronto, 92%. You know, the city gets 8%, And those who get 92% do a massive failure in basically building public transportation in Toronto and the GTA. And it's been a massive failure. Since 1995, when we were going to build 4 subways, if you remember, under the Ray government, and we ended up getting, under Mike Harris, half a subway in Shepherd, there's been no plan. There's been no expansion. 14 years. That's almost 1,400,000 people later. There's been no plan. Finally, we get Transit City last year. The premier signs on. The community signs on. Lo and behold, and then they withdraw $4 billion from this plan. And guess what? 300,000 Torontonians who are most in need in priority neighborhoods simply have to be waiting on the sidewalk forevermore. That's not acceptable. And as mayor of the city of Toronto, I will not tolerate that. I will organize, I will go and knock on Premier McGinty's door and work with each of you to make sure, because transit is social integration, gives opportunity, and gets people moving, good for the environment and all that. It's not acceptable. What's going on?
Great. Thank you, Joe. And Rocco.
I look at the subway map just about every day, and I cry, because it's basically the same subway map I was looking at when I was 12 years old. And that's not true of any other major city in the world. We have the world's best 1970s subway system, but it's 2010 and it's time to get moving. And with all due respect to Mr. Pantalone, it's not enough to simply beg to the province. We have to show and we have to stand on our own 2 feet. One, we have to correct a very poor governance structure at the City of Toronto with respect to transit that, as Mr. Smitherman has said, has resisted real integration and talking to the rest of the region, when in fact it has to be a regional solution, because as many people go from the 416 to the 905 to work today as the other way around. They've shown themselves incapable of managing any projects of any size on time and on budget. St. Clair was supposed to cost $43 million, ended up costing $120 million. The Union Station platform extension supposed to be $90 million, $140 million. So we need to do what the province has already done with Metrolinx, remove the politicians from the TTC board, put in a skills-based private sector board to show the government, to show Queen's Park that we're serious, that we're putting in best practice governance, and then we need to put some of our own money on the table, as I've suggested through Transit City Plus, pay down our debt, and commit the $450 million a year that we currently spend on debt servicing to invest in transit.
All right. Excellent. Now, just to change up the pace a little bit with an icebreaker question here. I'm not going to ask you who you're voting for, who you're rooting for World Cup. We know that would be contentious. I mean, Joe, come on. In your neighborhood alone, there's a lot of different teams. I won't put you on the spot to that extent.
We scored its first World Cup goal today.
But I will ask you, where's the best place to watch the game? And you've got about 15 seconds on that question, and let's start with Joe.
I think it's College Street, Little Italy, even though no part of Toronto it really is a bad place. And the reason I do that, because you have Italian restaurants, you have Portuguese restaurants, Brazilian restaurants, Italian restaurants run by Portuguese.
All right. Excellent. George?
Well, I think that the awesome thing about Toronto is that the best place to watch the game constantly changes with which game is on. And it's the opportunity that you have to experience all of Toronto if you just had the free time to follow the schedule of the games.
Get what the action is.
In terms of favorites, I'm rooting for any team that comes from the African continent. I'm a homer by instinct.
Good one. Okay. Excellent. Rocco, inside tips, best place to watch it.
My heart is with Italy, my head is with Argentina, and there are literally thousands of fantastic places. I love Tricolore on St. Clair West. It's a great group, and they make an awesome espresso.
Awesome. Okay. Fantastic. Thank you so much. Now we're back to some very serious matters, and it's the T word. Yep, we're going to talk about taxes. All right, so there's going to be a bit of math in this question. Hang on here. And we are, on this one, going to be starting with Joe. So, in 2010, 39% of Toronto's revenue comes from property taxes. 22% comes from federal and provincial transfers, and 15% from user fees. Are you concerned with this heavy dependence on property taxes for city revenue, and do you have any plans of pursuing other income streams? Joe Pantalone.
I'm extremely concerned. If you're in New York, Chicago, because we often compare ourselves to those cities, the property tax portion is not 38 to 39%, it's about half of that. Because there they have access to wealth-generated taxes, like income taxes and sales taxes. And frankly, Ontario is the only jurisdiction in Canada where such an over-reliance on the property taxes on shelter, basically. And that's simply wrong. In my opinion, the solution is not to find new taxes, simply make sure that the taxes which presently get raised, remember 92% of those go to the federal provincial government, get properly given to Toronto, which is Canada's biggest city, the provincial capital of Toronto. We should be proud, there should be serious investment here, and there isn't. We have to go begging for investment to those who are collecting our taxes, and that's simply wrong and needs to be changed. That's what the Federation of Canadian Municipalities said, that's what Montreal is saying, that's what Vancouver is saying, that cities have to be treated with respect, not simply as beggars, for services that all of us need.
George Smitherman.
Well, this is really, I think, for all of you in this room, the defining point of distinction between me and Councillor Pantalone. Because everybody associated with the organization perhaps wants me to say that I support the idea that Toronto should implement a new sales tax, as an example, to further diversify the stream of revenue and to have less dependence on property taxes. But I really think that what I owe you is the honest answer that comes from experience, which means a recognition of the times that we are in, and also the trend line that we were on. What I know is that since Mayor Miller came to office, the City of Toronto has gained a share of the federal gas tax, the provincial gas tax, has had uploading in the areas of public health, land ambulance, and social services, with planned uploading to continue for the next 4 or 5, I think maybe even 6 years. In addition to that, the City of Toronto Act was passed, which has given the City of Toronto the land transfer tax, a $52 million vehicle registration tax, and more recently, an advertising tax. In addition to that, this government has introduced a fee-for-service associated with waste, and most years the rate of increase in taxes was at or slightly above the rate of inflation. In the times that we're in, I don't think it's realistic to assume that on top of those things we're going to have the bounty of an additional stream of revenue. And as a progressive person, I'm dedicated to finding a way within the existing resource base to still show a path forward for progress. And I think that is the challenge of the times that we are in, where the federal and provincial levels of deficit are extremely troubling and unlikely to produce the rewards that we might wish in the very short term.
Rocco Rossi.
The reality is we have a lower reliance on property tax as a percentage of overall revenues than Montreal, Ottawa, and Vancouver. But Joe is right, it's higher than New York or Chicago, but not by double. New York is in the mid to high 20s. Nonetheless, we do ourselves a disservice with the province and with the federal government by not showing real discipline with our own spending. And one of the problems is that the latest survey indicates that only 12% of Torontonians believe that City Hall spends its money wisely. And the only good news about that is that that's 9% more than believe Elvis still lives. But it is an incredibly low level of legitimacy that allows Queen's Park and Ottawa, quite frankly, to not be the fulsome partners that they could be if we were in a stronger negotiating position. And part of that means that we need multi-year planning. A $9.2 billion operating budget planned 1 year at a time is not a recipe for negotiating strength with upper levels of government. I mean, imagine going into your banker and asking for $9.2 billion and saying, here's my 1 year business plan. That conversation's not going to last very long.
Very interesting and very important topics. Just to go back and forth a little bit, would all of you agree that the multi-year budgeting process might be, Joe?
Well, I think there's a false impression being given here. First of all, we do have a 10-year capital plan in the city, so therefore it's not a year by year. And you know what? You have 5,000 police officers. You think you're going to start from scratch next year and have no police officers? Obviously the base is what it is, and we build it from there. In effect, there is a multi-year planning, because you're committed to maintaining what you presently have.
All right,
So therefore, I think it's giving a false illusion there to the reality.
Firstly, an approach to multi-year budgeting, as many of you know who are running organizations, means you're looking as far down the pipeline as you can for the opportunities, like when a contract comes due, maybe to renegotiate it at a different level, or for other forms of opportunities, say with respect to new granting opportunities or what have you. It's about actually lifting your head up. To use the analogy of hockey, not coming across the blue line, carrying the puck with your head down, which very often results in a bad circumstance. Thing about it is that the City of Toronto projects a sense of powerlessness, which is unhelpful to us overall. And I am personally tired of the situation that occurs every year where my city projects that it is broke and bankrupt and powerless. I reject this, and I think we have to take back a sense of power and responsibility for the budget of our city.
We are getting into some really interesting stuff. I want to give the last word to Rocco on this. This is interesting and important. Yep.
From 2002 to 2008, labor costs at the City of Toronto grew by 6.5% a year, each year compounded. That's 3 times GDP growth. It's 3 times higher than the rate of the average income of the average taxpayer in this city. Unless we confront that issue, realistically, as adults, we are not going to be able to control this budget, and that requires numbers you can count on. You can't show up at the end of the year, hold a really important press conference, only to announce that, guess what, good news everyone, I just found $100 million under a sofa cushion somewhere. It totally undermines our credibility with senior orders of government. If you're the province, what are you thinking in that conversation when you're seeing the mayor say that?
Joe, can you make it 15 seconds?
Sure.
It would be good to hear from you, but really, really quick.
But just that the reality is that municipal expenditures in the last 12 years have been increasing year over year less than the provincial and federal expenditure. Fact. The other reality is we have suffered from downloading. 50% of the chances are that the province used to pay, now you have to pay. That's $256 million. That's the equivalent of about 13% of your taxes.
You know what? We're going to keep going. I bet you this is going to come up.
Let me add something more then.
Okay, because the next question I'm going to ask, you're going to love this, guys.
And if I could finish this in another time, we have something like $500 million in downloading cost, which we have done. $256 million transit, which will be the 50% share. We have $75 million for court services, which used to be a provincial expense that gave to us. And we have over $200 million, in housing downloading.
Hang on to it there. Hang on. Wait.
We got a downloading problem.
We are into the substantive issues in a mayoral debate here. This is fantastic.
Right.
Wait, hang on a sec. You might be able to work this into the next question, which I'm going to go in, but it is related, okay? Cities around the world deliver services in many different ways, including open, competitive bids for basic city services like garbage and waste management. Unions can bid on and often win these contracts. Would you consider this approach for Toronto? And if so, for what services? And it's time for Rocco to answer first.
The answer is absolutely yes. The example set in Indianapolis and elsewhere shows that you can effectively go to alternate service delivery, and the unions are in a position to bid for the work and have won contracts from time to time. I wouldn't limit it to thinking just about the for-profit sector. I think we need to open up the social services sector as well to non-profit service delivery. I look at an organization like the Learning Enrichment Foundation in the former city of York, up on Industry Avenue. They service 10,000 clients a year, English as a second language, skills training, daycare, food programs, and others. And they do it for a fraction of the cost of comparable services run directly by the city, because they don't let job descriptions get in the way of getting the job done, and they leverage the power of volunteerism, the power of love, which is a phenomenal source of wealth in this city that we need to do more with.
And I want to note that we have had a name check for Celine Dion in this debate. This is getting very interesting. The power of love, that was very nice.
Shout out to Celine.
Celine!
Because
Okay.
smelly love, though. Scott, I wanted
Key question.
I think that on the specific question that you asked, general answer would be yes. I already said in my opening that as Minister of Health, I sought in all opportunities to drive resources to the community level. I think that there are opportunities both in constructs with the private sector, but also with the not-for-profit sector, business improvement areas, frankly, across quite a wide array of city services. But before you decide to go down that path, you must, as a matter of principle, first establish first service principle. What that means is that before you get into the discussion of who might deliver it, you actually do the hard work to make sure that you define it so that you don't end up buying something that you didn't know you were going to get. I think that's the obligation that you have if you want to bring more innovative form of service delivery. Communities. Why are communities kept out of parks by unions? This doesn't make any sense to me. I think that there's quite a bit at the city that deserves a look. Just one small point on Councillor Pantalone. I think it's part of the problem of credibility that we have. And if you want to call me an apologist for the province of Ontario, go right ahead. Trust me, I know how to get people's attention. When Toronto needs and deserves and warrants, I know how to get people's attention. But one problem that we have is on the is on the issue of the transit subsidy. See, the thing about it is that we used to get 50-50 operating funds and we don't. That's true. And 256 is half of the city's operating subsidy for the TTC. That's true as well. But why doesn't Councillor Pantalone acknowledge that the province of Ontario this year gave for the operation of the Toronto Transit Commission $155 million of gas tax money, which is new and is not part of the downloading exercise of Mike Harris, as an example. We got to refresh our story when it's true and progress has been made.
Well, Joe, you got two things to take on. We might give you a little extension on the time here. So,
well, first of all, in terms of the question that was asked, 40% of what the garbage the city collects is already contracted out. You know, and by the way, if it was 100% contracted out, you still could have strikes. In Seattle last month, there was a strike, and all the garbage is contracted out there. So therefore, that doesn't solve that particular problem. And also, what I find disturbing about this issue about contracting out and privatizing is really that you want to take better paid wages and benefits and basically downgrade them by paying people less in wages and benefits and offer another company that's all money. And guess what? The first service they want to contract with usually is cleaners, not garbage, cleaners. And who are the cleaners? Well, the cleaners are usually immigrants. They're not university professors who want to wash the washrooms late at night, you know. And usually they're immigrant women, you know, who that extra wage and benefit that they get because the city's a fair employer means that they spend it in their families to get settled here in free education and then we have better society. You know, why? If you give it to a private company, the private company, someone is going to go to lower wages and benefits going to go to them, and they're going to invest it somewhere else, maybe New York, maybe London, I don't know, but definitely not in this community. Frankly, why is it always pick on the most vulnerable people whenever we want to contract out?
Joe, that's a totally unfair characterization of the issue.
It's very fair.
Take a look at garbage collection in the former city of Etobicoke. That is being done by unionized workers. This is not an anti-union argument. This is not an anti-fair wage argument. That is managed significantly more efficiently, because, for instance, absolutely, I'm a fair wage supporter, but I'm a fair management supporter as well. One of the things that Turtle Island, which does the garbage collection in Etobicoke, has done is when those big bins that we were all forced to take right into our homes, the bin that actually has more square footage than my home, that allows for automatic pickup by the trucks, which allows the trucks to pick up faster than before, and Turtle Island has been able, through attrition, to reduce the number of people they require, still paid great wages, still within a unionized environment, but managed more effectively.
Thank you. Okay, we are going to go fast. We've got like 10 more minutes max. I want to throw in one more quick lightning round. I need a one-word answer here. Voter turnout, municipal elections, appallingly low in this city. Now, this has come up already in your opening remarks, Joe, but one proposition has been put forward is to give voting rights in municipal elections to permanent residents, to extend the franchise to those who have not yet become Canadian citizens. Simply, are you in favor of this? Can we start with George?
Yes.
All right. You've heard it clearly. Rocco Rossi.
The proudest moment of my parents' life in Canada.
One word.
No, was becoming a citizen. It's a 3-year path to citizenship. We should be encouraging and helping and training everyone to get to citizenship as quickly as possible.
Joe Pantalone.
Yes, we see.
Okay, fantastic, thank you. Okay, in Toronto, the neighborhood you live in and your income level has a strong impact on your health. For example, a report that was published this week, which is called Toronto Ground Zero, in the incidence of diabetes was looked at. Of course, this has a great influence if you're going to get the diabetes where you live. What would you do to reduce health inequalities in Toronto so that all Torontonians can live healthier? We'll start with Rocco.
Well, as the former CEO of the Heart and Stroke Foundation of Ontario, this is an issue that's near and dear to my heart, and it's on multiple levels. One is with respect to ability to get to recreational activities, to exercise, to community centers. We need to do a much better job of integrating our school board assets and our city assets, because today those two realities don't speak together, and so we're not leveraging the power of the tremendous assets we have that are already paid for, that need to be used better to give people more activity. Secondly, there's the issue of food, and one of the biggest problems that we've seen are basically healthy food deserts, particularly in the inner suburbs, particularly around the at-risk communities or priority communities, where, quite frankly, you don't have access to grocery stores in near proximity. And so you want to have a movement from this ghettoization that we did through socialized housing to mixed use, so that we're going to be able to bring more options into those communities.
Thank you, Rocco. Joe Pantalone.
I think you need more local food production, frankly. You know, some parks will have some fruit trees, community gardens, stuff like that. You need also the city's procurement policy to be enhanced in terms of we buy more locally, which is fresh food. And thirdly, and I think thirdly, we have to support organizations that are providing this service. Yesterday there was an all candidates meeting, Midtown Seniors, and they provide something like 77,000, Meals on Wheels every day. But you know what? They get the grant from the City of Toronto in order to help do that. We have to give money to the community. We then harness the volunteers. We then go out there, work with businesses, which is other food, in order to bring it to people.
Thank you.
This is where it makes a difference.
Great, excellent.
Look at my record. As a Minister of Health in the province of Ontario, wherever I had the opportunity to apply my power, I drove resources to the community level. They come out with a report on priority neighborhoods, 13 neighborhoods, 11 didn't have a community health center. Every one of them has one of those emerging. We built diabetes clinics. We funded organizations like Mid-Toronto. So a big bit of it is about applying as much as possible resources to the community level, especially across the ethno-cultural makeup. This is priority number one. The city has core responsibilities. One of its responsibilities is recreation, and we don't do a very good job of it. I'm going to drive a renaissance of recreation as part of a strategy to get us ready to host the world for the Pan Am Games in 2015, and a variety of initiatives associated with poverty and the implications in terms of access to food. I think that there's been a consistency across all three candidates here that we have a lot of opportunity to do a better job in assisting people to get the right kind of food, to be able to live within their budgetary circumstances, and to address this underlying scourge of diabetes, which is a big problem to be addressed.
Thank you. And supporting community infrastructure is part of that, and youth initiatives, keeping kids active. A lot of that in recent years has come through Toronto's priority neighborhood policies. I'm looking for a really short question here so we have time for another big one. But could you just tell me if you support the continued investment in priority neighborhoods in 20 seconds or less? Let's start with George.
You can't stop at the priority neighborhoods that have been identified. Anytime you draw a line on a map, you cause problems instantly. I've supported priority neighborhoods with all of my heart, but I won't stop here because it actually entrenches inequity and causes problems where funders sometimes leave existing communities.
Excellent. Joe Pantalone.
Well, so many community leaders, including Maytree, have identified there's more than one city developed here, and it so happens that the inner suburbs become vulnerable to higher unemployment, higher youth unemployment, and poverty. I think we need to strengthen that program, not weaken, because that's investing in people, especially young people. Absolutely, we have to do more of it.
Rocco Rossi.
I think that the mayor deserves a big shout out for this policy and the work that's been done by United Way and others. But there are just too many neighborhoods out there being told that they're number 14. Behind the 13 are another 13 and another 13. We need to do more, but it's not just about more money through grants into the areas. It's also about using the power of the city to make a real difference in the renovation and revitalization of these areas. Unlike Mr. Smitherman, who opposed the movement of the TTC headquarters from Davisville and Yonge, I think it's actually a good move to reduce costs, but I wouldn't put it at Yonge and York Mills, which could be used for other private purposes. If we're going to move it, let's use it as a vehicle of revitalization. Move it to Jane and Finch. Move it to Victoria Park and Danforth, and use it as a way to build out real jobs and real opportunity in those neighborhoods.
Thank you. Excellent. You are doing an amazing job of compressing very big concepts and ideas. I appreciate that. But we are going to continue torturing you in that regard with a very big question, but we need you to be very succinct, and it concerns the Ontario Municipal Board. What do you know? Hey, does our city council get second-guessed in some of its planning processes? Who knew? By having its decisions overturned by the Ontario Municipal Board. What is your position on the abolition of the Ontario Municipal Board, which, of course, as you know, many people have called for, has a long, illustrious history here, and we just need to know where you're at with that. And let's start with Rocco.
The way you get to this problem is by taking a page out of what New York has done with the development of precinct plans, secondary zoning plans. The problem with the official plan is it's too vague. We need detail, and we need proactive planning that works with the neighborhoods ahead of time to develop the density issues along transit corridors, and then you're in a position to allow the development community to come in and build as of right after the consultations have occurred. If you do that, if you develop real clarity and transparency in the process, you're not going to have the footballs thrown back to the OMB. And right now, quite frankly, it's used more often as an excuse by council not to make a decision in the first place.
George, what's that?
I think that this is one of those places where we as Torontonians got to get past the scapegoating and recognize that we have had unused powers in this area. But really, I should just defer to Paul Bedford because he's here and knows so much more about all this. Thing about it is that the city has had, since the City of Toronto Act passed, powers to do more of these judgments on their own basis. They haven't done it for reasons I don't know. I think Rocco's absolutely right, and the work that Adam Vaughan is doing and People Plan Toronto is an important step forward, which is we know that there's a pressure for intensification. Let's take advantage of the resources that are available from both developers, communities, and the city's planners, and let's do the hard work of precinct and neighborhood planning so that we do define in greater detail and make less likely the official plan stuff goes to the OMB. We can stop this process of the utilization of the OMB through investment in communities, and that's what my development model will be all about.
Joe Pantalone.
Well, the OMB is not democratic, and in a democracy, they should not be allowed to make the decisions they are. In my opinion, should be abolished. However, we gotta make sure that the city is able to put in the structure in place to do its job, and we gotta make sure this is not another downloading situation from the province. They already downloaded $500 million, which you have to bear on our property taxes. I don't think we need more. They're spending money for the Ontario Municipal Board for services in Toronto. I'd like to negotiate with Premier McGuinty whereby he transfers that money. Since he won't be able to do the work, then we'll be able to set up our own structure. Because when you only have 8% of the taxes collected here, and you have to do everything that you can imagine, another load is a problem. So if you get that commitment, it'll get done because it has to get done.
Thank you for those succinct. You did a good job. Very complicated issues. We do have time for just another little sort of survey of a big, monstrous, large issue here. But we will be ending with a lightning round, so don't worry. Metropolitan regions, increasingly, it's the case that it's not nations nor individual cities that compete for investment, but metropolitan regions, with our talented and skilled immigrants. How do you plan to ensure that Toronto works in partnership with the 905 region to accelerate the prosperity in the GTA? And we'll start with Joe.
That's a very important question, because at one time the municipal governments were able to do regional planning. Metro Toronto, all the growth was inside of us. Now, because there's as many people living outside Toronto as there is inside, the only authority really we can do regional planning is the provincial government. And we have a problem here, because when you get all the various municipalities together, everybody is equal. Aurora has will have the same voters as Toronto, even though Toronto's got 50%. So
we're like the PEI in that way.
That's right, exactly. And that is
without the potatoes.
So I think that the province has to take more of a leadership role in terms of regional planning. The only place that done regional planning is the Greenbelt, which was terrific, and the embryonic Metrolinx Go Transit program, and nothing else. Actually, the old Metro Council, before amalgamation, recommended it be a regional municipality, which included all of the GTA and Montana. That would have been the proper solution to devolve to us that authority. But they didn't do that. Instead, they fragmented us, and that's why we have fragmentation. So I will fight against that and try to see whether there is some hope at the end of that tunnel.
Thank you for the clarity. Rocco?
Again, we can't keep blaming the provincial government. Toronto needs to put some water in its wine and show real leadership in the region. I want a strong Toronto in the middle of a strong GTA. Economic development for the last 30 years has been about one thing, stealing business from one side of Steeles Avenue or the other. And I'm sick and tired of a philosophy where we're fighting against, Frank Scarpitti and Bill Fish and Hazel McCallion. I mean, goodness knows no one's ever beaten her, so why do you think we would be the first? I want to fight with Hazel, with Frank, with Bill Fish, to eat Chicago's lunch and Dallas's lunch and Hamburg's lunch, not our own, not fighting over a diminishing pie. Invest Toronto is a good first step. We have some of the board members, my good friend Alan Broadbent here. We need Invest GTA, and we need to integrate a regional transportation authority, a closer link, regional transportation authority, economic development on a regional basis. Let's use 2015 and the Pan Am Games as a catalyst to truly act as a region.
George Smitherman, I imagine you've thought deeply about these things.
Well, not only have I had a chance to think deeply about them, I've actually been deeply immersed in them. The thing about it is that it seems the opportunity at Toronto City Council is almost a mirror image to the opportunity that Barbara Hall had in 1994 when she was elected mayor, even though that was in the time before amalgamation, because the Toronto of its day was also refusing to be a full and active participant and to play well with all of its neighbors. It's time to recognize that we are an economic region and we are all in it together. And even though we have differences, which will require fights from time to time, and I've had those and bear the scars of fighting with Hazel and Bill Fish and Roger Anderson and Emil Kolb and all the lower tier municipality leaders as well. But the point is, with Barbara Hall, on behalf of David Collinet, and as a government minister, as a GTA critic in opposition, I've been working in this environment, and it starts with respect and recognizing that when it comes to economic matters, we are all in it together.
Thank you. All right, I promised you one quick lightning round before your closing statements of 3 minutes each. I'm going to start with Joe. Can you tell me one Toronto artist that you admire? Arts, Toronto, we got them. They're good, they're happening everywhere. An artist in Toronto that you like, Joe?
H.R. Thompson.
H.R. Thompson,
H.R. Thompson is an amazing individual, gives some giving to the community. He lastly was involved with William Lyon Mackenzie.
Excellent.
During the 175th anniversary of the city.
Well defended, very good. Rocco.
Albert Schultz, not just because he's an amazing artist, but because he's an incredible advocate for the arts and one of the most articulate and persuasive people that I've ever met.
Theater's doing well so far. All right.
I want to say Jane and Finch's Julie Black, because she's a woman that's on the rise and on the move, and she's a woman that is deeply, deeply dedicated at all times at doing all she can to advance the neighborhood and community that she called home.
Awesome. Okay, fantastic. Thank you for showcasing that. It's a thing that matters a lot to people. So, we're almost done. You've been incredible in your ability to be concise. You got 3 minutes for a closing statement, and we're going to reverse the order from the opening, so we'll be starting with George.
Thanks. Well, I just want to say first and foremost that it's a pleasure to be on the stage yet again with my colleagues. We've been doing this rather regularly, and sometimes with other participants as well. They've been staging their own media events today. But I do want to say that this format I've just found, and I'm pretty sure these fellows have as well, to be superior to some of the others. And I think that in this election race, which is so long, it's disappointing that maybe actual debates don't occur so much as we might like, that everything's 10 or 20 seconds at a time. So I've enjoyed this format very much, and I think it's the appropriate format for a group of people who, when you look at them in their individual sense or collectively, have a lot of capacity and power to move mountains in the city of Toronto. I think this is a pivotal election for Toronto. It's about having an ambition for the future. I was born in '64 in this city, and I have lived out my entire life, and as a gay man, been given extraordinary opportunities to exercise important power and decision-making, and especially to work in local communities like Regent Park and St. Jamestown, which have taught me the most important lessons in my life. And I want to bring all the energy that I have, the experience and the passion and the drive, to champion the initiatives that are necessary to actually unite our city in a way that it is not yet united, and to give real life and meaning to these words so often uttered, diversity our strength. It's time to be in a position to actually make that more real. And I think when you look at it, you know that when push comes to shove, I shove in the right direction on behalf of the right people, and I get things done. And this is why I'm running to be the mayor of Toronto, because I love this city, and I think that I'm in the right place at the right time to make a difference and to set Toronto on a more ambitious path forward, and one that is more just for all of its amazing residents. Thank you very much.
That was fantastic. I think we just got the new slogan. I think the new slogan just came out there. I'll push in the right direction. I like it. All right. Shove it. Okay. Rocco Rossi.
Thank you very much, not just for putting this together, but my thanks to the organizers, thanks to Maytree and all of the organizations represented here today for the work that you do on a day-to-day basis. This is a significant election, and I particularly want to give a shout out to all those who've graduated from the civics classes and have put their name forward. It's a brave act, it's a courageous act, and I wish you the greatest of good fortune in bringing that agenda forward. It's interesting, many years ago, in the whole debate about Western alienation, Mr. Manning came up with this saying that the West wants in. Well, I think that this election in Toronto is about the West want in. We have a phenomenal city. We have a phenomenal city on so many dimensions. The #1 United Way campaign in North America. In absolute terms, not just relative terms. Bigger than New York, bigger than LA, bigger than Chicago. We are hugely generous, open-hearted people. We have one of the world's greatest UJA campaigns. The Tomorrow campaign is absolutely breathtaking. Almost $500 million, 3 campuses in Toronto and the region. Our financial services sector came out of the recession stronger than any other financial services sector in the world. The world is looking to us for leadership on this. Our arts and culture community, what's been done in terms of the revitalization of the AGO, the ROM, other great institutions. And yet, with all of that great going on, there's enormous frustration and anger, largely because people believe, and I think rightly, that Toronto City's government is not as good as the people and city it purports to lead. I believe the system is broken. And I believe that those who broke it are not going to be the ones to fix it. I'm not a career politician. I'm passionate about politics, been involved as a volunteer most of my life, believe that public service is one of the highest callings in our society. But it's a time of service, it's not a career. When it gets to the point of career, people start worrying about their entitlements and not the services that the people of the City of Toronto are entitled to. Please vote. Whether for me, whether for any of the great candidates, this is critical to get out there and vote, educate yourself more and more on the issues, and please, please help to take back this city for the citizens of Toronto. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, and bringing it home, Joe Pantalone.
Well, as an immigrant to this city, I've gained a number of perspectives. First of all, you wear the scar of being an immigrant. It could be inside, whatever, the psychological adaptation, and all sorts of issues that comes with coming to a different country, different culture, and also something like close to 50% of Torontonians share that because they were not born in Canada. But also it's giving me an amazing appreciation of what an amazing city we have here. You know, it's hard to believe by reading the paper sometimes or listening to some of the narrative candidates what an amazing city we have. You know, and it's a great city. And it's a city which in the last few years we worked very hard to make even better against all sorts of adversity. $500 million of downloading, for example, and we managed to survive. We managed to, put in a green roofs bylaw, which I was proud to lead. We managed to do tree plantings, which is an additional 100,000 trees planted in Toronto in the last 10 years of a program that I led, green building standards, etc., etc. You know, I believe that Toronto is at the crossroads in this election. We have a clear choice here. You have the progressive choice, which means that we build on that foundation and we make an amazing city, because it's a good city. 80% of Torontonians like it. Into a fantastic city, but that requires investment. It doesn't mean you sell your heirlooms, Toronto Hydro, like somebody suggested, or Paradise part of the TTC, like somebody else has suggested. You don't do that. Great cities, you invest in, and they become fantastic city. The alternative is, you don't invest as much because you spend less. You're penny wise and pound foolish. We got to invest in transit. We got to invest in the priority neighborhoods. We got to invest in people and community. That costs money. But the city is growing. The organism is growing, so therefore your investments have to grow as well. Don't believe the other gloom and doom things. Because frankly, if we do not invest, there's other cities which will take our place. The world is strewn with great cities that were great ones and now no more. And I'm sure that you don't have to go very far. Look at the Great Lakes. There's 3 cities there: Cleveland, Buffalo, and Detroit. 50, 60 years ago, they were as good in their time as Toronto is now. Look at them now. When you take the easy way, the penny wise and pound foolish, and then invest more in our city, in our people, in our transportation system, I'd like to suggest that we're taking the road to Detroit. And frankly, that's not what Torontonians want. That's not what Joe Pantalone wants. And that's why I'm running for mayor. I could have retired. I could have got a nice pension. I could have made more money, my H&R person whom I went to see told me. But you know what? I love this city, and we got to invest in this city. I have 2 kids who are born here. I want to make sure they got a fantastic city in the future. That's why I'm running for mayor, and I hope to get your support.
Really, beautifully stated. Very, very thoughtful. We have very hard decisions, and thank you for bringing all this down. We're going to round up, and I just wanted to say that we all gossip a lot about this mayor thing. Like, we're all, the chatterati, but a lot of what we talk about is how unbelievably crazy and brutal that job will be. So, as much as you want it, it's you guys who are being brave and courageous, and thank you very much for your time and thoughts.